Hey, welcome back with Ryan and Lisa at Our Healer and Our Protector. We're going to get started today and really actually talk about when God feels silent, trusting in this waiting period. And, kind of where I go initially with this is talking through the divorce process and how it can be, very long and arduous in this journey or trail that you find yourself on. And Lisa, from that perspective, do you want to talk about how long kind of your divorce journey has taken?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, year and a half, 2 year journey. Everyone's divorce or getting divorced looks different, right? Me and my ex-husband started on the journey and we did a year of therapy. We continued to live in the same house in separate rooms. We wanted to take it slow, and in that process, we had a daughter at home. And we wanted her to take it all in and take it slow and make the right decisions and don't make hasty ones or on emotion. And Doug and I prayed together. We prayed together as a family with the kids next to each other and shared our journey with our kids with open dialogue.
Yeah, I think when I hear you say that, Lisa, it's this undeniable aspect that you were trying to protect the children. You're trying to protect your daughter, knowing that she had a couple of years of high school left, and you wanted to get through that sophomore year of school at a minimum before you guys, truly separated and moved on through, what would be the journey of, kind of tailoring it to, having parents that, live in two separate, households or locations or whatever that looks like. And, kind of in that, like you said, you were talking about prayer, trying to, heal the family before you make some of these major life decisions. And, from both sides of that, like I see the protection in it and I see the healing in it. The problem is when a family is like ripped apart at the seams, be it, your spouse or your children, it can be so, laborsome, obviously painful. And, really looking at it from that time of like, is God, silent? Like, is he, maybe you feel like he's not there, and he always is. Jesus Christ is, right there with us, beside us, sometimes carrying us through the process. And I know my story is a little bit different, but I want you to maybe finish things out before I go
Yeah.
down this different route of,
And I'm
what it
not
looked like.
saying that what we did was right or wrong, right? Each family has to do what helps them process, what helps them feel safe. And I didn't make all the right decisions in that year that we stayed together in the house separately. I held back, not for my ex, but for my daughter. And I should have explained more what was going on. Her perception was a lot different after the fact when I talked to her and I explained to her what was going on. And she was like, wow, that's not what I thought was going on. To keep that area private in my life right now, I wish I could have done things differently with my daughter, but it all came out of love and protection, even though it might have been wrong at the same time. I was always open with my ex of what I was doing. It was very important to me to tell the truth to him because the unknown is worse than knowing. And I knew that because of what I've been through.
Yeah. I can certainly see that. I know, from my side of the street, it was this aspect where, I had to find a place to live over a short period of time. It was during Christmas, a couple Christmases back. And I found myself in a one bedroom apartment. It was the only thing available that, I had like 3 days. And, it was down the street from what we call the big house. which is no longer the ex-Reichert residence, because everyone's kind of moved on from this part in life. But I found myself a very small apartment with May. And, it's one of those aspects that, I hadn't found, you know, my spiritual awakening yet through, sobriety and so on and so forth. I think I was probably sober about 30 days. It was time to move on and find, a place for myself to live. And that was really scary. Spent many years with the boys downrange or in other units around the world. But truly for the first time in, half century almost, where, I was on my own, starting over completely. And, I hadn't found how I talked to God in my life yet. And, it was dark. I think of that place as just this small little cave almost. And, I was afraid. I was that 6-year-old little boy that was scared of the dark, scared of Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. I just put the work in, I was going to meetings every day, trying to continue to work at the Fortune 500 company that I was at. And it was just one of those aspects where I felt extremely alone. Certainly I had people in the program that I could talk to, and my sponsor, that I was very close with. But it was just definitely a painful, scary place to be in. And, it was probably a couple months when I finally had that spiritual awakening that allowed me to really feel his presence again in my life. But it was still cold. It was still dark. And, I kind of felt lost. I mean, I think back to, the stories of Job in the Bible, and, he never doubted, he always trusted in the Lord, but it was certainly those friends around him that kind of, you still thought maybe they were part of your circle and you wanted to have a connection with someone, but you ended up, feeling very isolated, kind of on that island that we might talk about sometimes. And, that's where I think a lot of resentments started to build towards my ex. And, living in the big 4,500 square foot house down the street with a pool, a beautiful, backyard and all, kind of like going to Thanksgiving dinner. You find yourself like with all the turkey and all the fixings. And, I'm kind of sitting at the kids' table as an adult, but it's leftovers. It's not the main meal. And to me, that I think that's what hurt the most is, all those years that, you believe you're doing the right thing by providing, and you found yourself, very isolated, minus what you had in your external circle around you. And, that's where, you're every day hitting your knees, praying morning, noon, and night that it would get better, that grace, that light would come back into your life. And, I think that's where, both sides of that story, yours and mine, it's not a happy ending in there, because it's that tearing apart of the family. And I know it had that strain on my girls. It took many months for them to come back into my life before they, left again. Yeah, it was really, really lonely.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. And seeing you now, what's awesome about us doing this, we want to give hope out to other people. As you see us, as we progress in our podcast, you're going to see us get stronger in healing, and you get to be on that path with us, and we get to show other people the beginning and what the future can look like when you give it to God. In my journey, I knew I made a decision, and I had to do that on my own, in my unwavering of God, like just the beginning stuff, right? Being in your bed alone, like in this big king size bed, and every night when I would go in it and be alone, doing it the slow way, I got to learn to do it by myself. And I got to be in the presence of God, in the quietness, reading the Bible, and truly taking it in one night at a time, one day at a time, and becoming independent again. It had all the feelings, right? Truly freeing, scary, And I wasn't just thinking of myself, I was thinking of my children and even my ex, how that is affecting all of them. So like you and I having totally different ways of how this all happened. There is no wrong or right way. What my ex and I did, we were okay with that. And we both believed in God, so we kept on praying. He could have a totally different perspective, but I know that we both did the best that we could for our children. It's not easy. So Ryan, what you went through and I went through, either ways is very hard.
I don't.
And
There's no right
yeah,
way through this. It's kind of like how we talk about the fail forward, right? Like you work through it. Therapy is an amazing tool. You tried to do it, together, and you did it for a year. I know we had set up therapy, and we never did it. We went down the route of we don't even need to, and then papers were filed, and that long, arduous, year-long process started of being separated and working through the system that we know is part of that process. And it's ugly, it's evil, may get greedy, maybe at times. I know for me it was like, yeah, I got upset. It was one where I was it's like getting picked last for kickball back in high school, right? Like, who wants that? But there's a silver lining here, as I sit in what today is this studio. So when we were working through the custody process, Boo, the youngest of the two beautiful young women that I get to call my children, I was hoping that she would live with me every once in a while, and that did not come to fruition. But the good Lord had a plan, because Ryan's plan is never the right plan, kind of thing. It sounds good, and I might talk to some folks about it and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. They might be like, well, there might be a different way to see things. And kind of going back to the long road is the shortcut, like we've talked about in previous episodes. But did a 2-bedroom apartment, and over Christmas, this last year is when basically it became the office, the studio, the writing quarters for our protector development, and it birthed 3, 4, 5 books that are all in the works right now. And look at Our Healer, Our Protector, 7 episodes now into things, and on multiple other podcasts with folks out there. And it's this, we can never see into the future, right? And so like what I believed was going to be what I wanted, right, is I certainly do want Boo in my life. Miss her greatly. But it's one of those things that I know right now, he's protecting me, knowing that we're both healing through this process. And we're probably not ready to have that relationship like we once did. Yeah.
it's a grieving process, Ryan. I could see the hurt in your voice, and I can see it in your eyes. It's a grieving process. It's the grieving process of the family not being the same. And it's really hard, and it's hard out there for other people too. Every situation looks different for the children and the families that are going through divorce and the divorced parents. Children, we want you to know that you are so loved. And it's really hard at any age, when they're little, middle school, high school, young adults. The process of going through it is about the mom and dad and not about the children. Most of the time, we stay together for the children because we do not want to hurt their hearts. And sometimes staying together can hurt their heart even more when they're not seeing the love that we want them to know to find in other people. So for the adults going through this, and if any children are listening, just know that your parents love you so much. And there's always this process of going through this that it feels like it's one person's fault and the other one's doing. But remember this, it takes two, and it takes both people coming from accountability. It takes two to make a relationship. And it doesn't have to be someone's fault. Yes, there's all different kind of reasons why people get a divorce. Let's focus on remembering the good things. Just remember, children, it's not what your mom or dad did to you, it's what they did to the one that they married.
Yeah, I mean, that's the covenant. It's a commitment. It's this aspect of where we, find ourselves. Yeah, it's not this 50-50 aspect of things, right? It takes two, no matter how you look at it. Some days, somebody had to give 90 and somebody was only given 10, and vice versa. I'm sure there was many days, knowing in my alcoholic and prescription drug fog that I was probably given a lot of the 10, after retirement from the military. And that's where you find yourself, coming out of it. It's this, worshiping without like this outcome, knowing that like the Lord's going to put you in that valley to strengthen you, to condition you, to bring those talents inside of you, like just talk about being, the imperfect, perfect Christian, where, it's that refinement, iron sharpens iron, you're forged in the fires, you're made in the valleys. And that's that silence we kind of talked about when we started. And it was so beautiful, Lisa, hearing you, that compassion that you have, and that nurturing and loving, motherly aspect of things, but also, the nurse in you, that healer, knows like when we skin our knees or we break, our hearts have been broken, or maybe we break our own hearts because of decisions we make. We find ourselves, needing to be put back together. And I love that so much, knowing that, our kids need to understand that, like, it wasn't that we were, making decisions that, they weren't good enough. And, they were just part of the equation. Then, the most beautiful gifts that are part of those relationships that we have.
Amen.
I mean, it's the sheer aspect of it to me is like, girls, they're so amazing, to see them today, what I couldn't be proud of that. Hear that they go to Bible study every Thursday night together. Yeah, I'm not a part of it. I don't need to be a part of it, knowing that like their true father and his son, guiding them in their lives. And that nothing's better than that, honestly, to tell you the truth.
My kids are 6 years apart, Ryan, and they are close today. Through this, always when something bad happens, good stuff comes out of it. Due to this, my son and daughter have connected and call each other and protect each other. And through our conversations with my ex and I, they also will lock into each other and have their conversations with me or their dad. And they're there for each other. And I couldn't ask for anything more than that. I'm very proud of them for that. And same with your girls and the work that you and your ex did for them to be close, and the work that my ex and I have done, and I'm very proud of all of our kids. For those of you out there the struggles that you're going through, your children will see by the actions that you take, by your words, and by how you treat each other. Remember, you are a teacher to them, and they are learning. it is so important for both sides to speak highly of each other, to encourage, to spend time with both parents. There's kids out there that would do anything to have a mother or father either together or separated. Do not take that for granted. Yes, there are situations out there that kids should not be with a mother or father, right? That's going to happen. But if you're in that situation where that isn't the case, be grateful for each other that the kids have two people to go to. And it's so important to have a mother and father figure, two moms, two dads, to have both people involved in their life. It's a big impact.
Yeah, I mean that's that side of it, the importance of, having our parents there, having our father in our life, the faith-filled side of things, right? That community, and we can have that together, and knowing that things are different, and they won't be the same. I know that for me, this is where, again, Lisa has a different story. My parents have been divorced 23 years now, and at least I was an adult when it happened. But it was that aspect that, I was like, we'll never have, the same visions as I believe, we would, right? Like as you start a family and, kids, the grandkids, basically having both grandparents, or whatever that looks like. And those dynamics are different. But, if the Lord didn't know that amazing things could come from these valleys, these times where, he's silent, that's where things become so great. And, that's where we really refine, who we are and become a better mother, better father, a better ex-wife, a better ex-husband. We can grow in that to understand that they too are children of God, and we need to give them grace. And, these are things that we work on over time and space as we learn this new process of, whatever that title looks like. And
yeah, I was just thinking, Ryan, I was reflecting on what you were saying. And as adults, this is really hard, right? So then we have these children that we're like, oh my gosh, like imagine what their minds are going through and when us as adults are having a hard time. It's really important for us to sit back and imagine their life to them just got like torn apart and everything changes for them. Yes, us adults can adapt a little bit more than our kids. And maybe I'm reflecting more on our teenagers that we have and young adults in our families, but their life got crushed. Their vision of their family got crushed. So we need to give grace to our children. And Ryan, I'm sorry what you're going through, but that's where grace will come and they will come back. Let God lead. I've been reading this God's little book, Life by Richard Daly. In here, he says, let God lead. When the way forward seems a bit blurred, it can be God's way of getting you to recognize that things are changing. That's the time to consult him as to your next move. For further reflection, Proverbs 3:5-6 and Psalm 2:25. So what I was going to say in that, go for that walk in the morning or at night by yourself. And I love walking by myself and get grounded to the earth and feel everything and maybe listen to your favorite music. And I just talk to God out loud, and people just think I'm listening to my phone or talking to someone or my headphones, but I'm not talking to anybody. I'm talking out loud to God. And I have so many things that happen on my walk that I heard or saw or later on got the answers. So if you can do one thing to be in silent by yourself. One of those can be going for a long walk.